Okay, great. So again, welcome everyone to this Workfest session about networking. It's a practical session. We're really lucky to have Vicky Cheadle from Creative Bath with us today, as well as 3 other industry partners who are going to introduce themselves. So the session is going to be practical, as well as hearing from those partners and industry professionals locally with their top tips and advice about networking. My name's Louisa, and I'm here with my colleague John from the careers team. So we're running the session for you today. So what I'd like to do first is probably come out of this presentation and then ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So if I can hand over to Vicky first.
Hi there. As Louise said, I'm Vicky Cheadle. I'm owner of Good Crowd Media. I'm a marketing PR consultant, and I work with lots of mainly Bath-based businesses. And Creative Bath is one of my main clients, who I've been working with for about a year and a half, 2 years or so. And Steph Dodd, who's also on the panel, is also heads up Creative Bath and Media Clash. So yes, do you want me to say a bit about Creative Bath, what it is? Is that a good opportunity, Louisa?
What I might do is if just brief introductions now, and then we'll go back, do another round if that's all right, for a bit more insight. Okay. Thank you. So over to Steph, perhaps next.
Hi everyone. As Vicky said, I am the development manager for Creative Bath and also managing director at Media Clash, which is a media company based in Bath. We publish magazines across the southwest and also run events.
That's great. Thanks so much, Steph. Welcome. Elliot.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Elliot Sheen. I'm co-founder of Bind Media. So we are a paid media marketing agency. Effectively anywhere you can buy traffic. Think of Google, Bing, Facebook, and platforms like TikTok. We manage that on behalf of our client base, which is very varied. We've got everything from one-man bands in Bath all the way up to some household names like Gusto and Hush Puppies. So we just turned 3 as an agency in May, so new to the world of running a business, but plenty of experience with networking, predominantly digitally, to build our client base.
Brilliant, thank you, Elliot. We also have Paul here, who's managing director of Clearly PR. I'm not sure Paul is at the moment able to access mic and camera, unfortunately, but Paul, when you can, or if you can, please do chip in, and you can always use the chat function maybe in the meantime, but sorry if there are technical difficulties going on. So the first thing I'd like to do is for us to go back around, perhaps in that same order, with the presenters. It'd be great to hear just a few minutes or however long you like, but just to hear a bit about your career journey, I suppose, which I think is always brilliant for students to hear how you got to where you got to, which is probably quite hard to get into a few minutes, so just a brief sort of recap, and then a focus in there, or following on from that, about networking. I suppose you're sort of the key things that stick out for you in your career journey about networking. What happened? Where did it work really well and open doors? Maybe where did it not work so well? So a little about your own experiences would be really great. So Vicky, I'll hand over to you.
Hi all. Well, I'm an alumnus from Bath University, so I studied here, and all the roles I've had previously have been in the region. I didn't kind of know which direction I wanted to go in to begin with, so it took me a little bit of time to work out that it was marketing and PR. I worked at Schwinn GT Sales, so the leading manufacturer of bicycles initially, so it was very much product-based. And then I moved on to a completely different sector, professional services, and I worked at Deloitte in Bristol, and I ended up heading up the marketing function for the Southwest, and worked there for 10 years. It was probably quite good for me that in terms of it was the whole marketing mix, but a part of it was putting on a kind of networking events for clients. So I kind of facilitated that, and obviously you could really get an insight into how some of the kind of big deals in the region were taking place. So yeah, that was a fantastic opportunity. But after having a family, I decided to go freelance, and I worked as a freelancer for an agency in Bath for a couple of years, and then set up Good Crowd Media. Since then, I've really had a focus on kind of arts and culture and creative side. So I've worked with Bath Festivals, Visit Bath, Forest of Imagination, a whole host of kind of either one-man bands or larger organisations, but kind of with a steer around that kind of creativity and arts and culture field. So it was great for me to be able to do that, and kind of it's personal interest for me. So I've and a lot of those events that I put on or get involved in have kind of networking aspects to them. So, and obviously this leads quite nicely into Creative Bath. So some of you may know Creative Bath. It's a community platform for creative businesses and individuals in Bath. We have the website, which anyone can sign up to become a member. We list jobs there, events across the city. We host our own events. These can be anything from having thought leadership speakers. We've had Chris Anderson from TED before, Roger Soul from Mulberry. We have breakfast meetings as well. Some of these have been slightly put on hold because of COVID. And I think we're going to have a whole host of new events coming up soon, and we have a weekly newsletter as well. So if you sign up to that, you can really find out what's going on. It's led by Creative Bath, but also in the wider city. So it's a really good tool to find out about anything to do with creativity locally. And we've got the Creative Bath Awards coming up soon as well. So please have a look at that, because it's a student category, and lots of small and larger organisations nominate themselves in that. So yeah, it's great to be involved in that, and I'm sure Steph can tell you a little bit more about that as well. Do you want me to go through some of my kind of tips, Louisa? Shall I do that? Yeah. So in terms of networking, I think the first thing is to really see what's out there in terms of your local community that you can get involved in. It might be free, some might be paid for, but just think about kind of what suits your skill set. I mean, it might be just somebody that you want to hear speak, because there'll be a variety of people that will go along to that, or it might be in your sector, so it doesn't have to be locally. In terms of making those first kind of connections with people, I know it can be really hard, because it really just depends on your kind of personality, whether you're more outgoing or whether you're more reserved. But I try to keep it light-hearted all the time. So I will approach people. Sometimes if you can get a heads up of who's going to be attending, that's quite useful. You can do a bit of research before you go. And obviously social media is brilliant for that. You can kind of find out what people look like. But generally, I try and keep it light-hearted. And I ask lots of questions of people rather than going into a big sales pitch about myself. Because I just like the conversation to kind of flow naturally, and I think people are generally there probably having quite a nice time as well. So but also to keep it fairly short, you know, and kind of speak to as many people as you can within that time scale, because you might only have a short amount of time after like an event's finished to kind of make those connections. Another thing that I do is, after I've been to a networking event, is I use LinkedIn predominantly. I just think it's brilliant to connect with people, just have a quick chat. It doesn't have to be too full on. If you can think of a way of collaborating, or something that can benefit both of you, then you might just want to touch on it there. And if they're on any other social channels, it's worth following them. And I tend to do lists in Twitter as well, if they're particular types of people, and I want to keep up with the conversation easily. And I do love Instagram. And then I just keep it chatty on social if there's nothing immediate that's coming up. And the other thing I do is I also use LinkedIn to see who I know that knows somebody that I'd like to talk to. Hey, Paul's here. Hello, Paul. We can see you. And then I ask whether they can refer me or introduce me to that person. I think that's quite a nice way of doing it because it kind of builds trust. Quite often I love going for a coffee. So I do tend to say, shall we just go for a chat and a catch up? And again, it just can be quite laid back. It doesn't have to be anything too onerous. So I think probably they're my top tips for networking, from like initial kind of research, introduction, and then follow up. Hope that's helpful.
Brilliant, thank you, Vicky. Really, really helpful, definitely. Just thinking, students that are listening, if you've got any questions, do take notes, because I think there's lots of great stuff in here. And if you've got any questions throughout, pop them in the chat, and then we'll come to those after we've heard from the speakers and before we go into a bit of networking practice. Okay, great. Shall I hand over to Steph then next, please?
Okay, great tips, Vicky. I'm also taking tips from this. And it's really good to hear everybody else's strategies and everything. So yeah, in terms of my story, I actually didn't go to university. I went to college. Once I'd finished college, I did go to boarding college, so I felt like I kind of had that experience. I was really ready for the world of work, but also I wasn't 100% sure on the direction that I wanted to go in. I've always been very creative, so I was interested in design. And I wrote emails, letters out to, I think it was even letters actually, old school. I wrote letters out to media companies. I knew I was going to be in Bath, so put the feelers out, applied for a few jobs in Bath. I was in a position, unfortunately, where I hadn't been able to get any work experience in the past, so that held me back. So just as a general tip, any opportunity that you get for work experience, take it. It's just such a great thing to do, even in this kind of context, to make connections and network. And by the way, at Media Clash, we're always open to taking work experience placements, so get in touch with me if that's of interest to you. So yeah, that was kind of holding me back with my job application. So I decided to put in for work experience rather than apply for jobs. And Future Publishing, as it was known then, took me on for work experience as part of its customer publishing team. I made myself really useful there during the week, took on everything that they asked me to do. And by the end of the week, they said, actually, you've been really useful. Do you want to stay and have a job? And I know that's probably like a real cushy example of a work experience, but it did just work out like that. They needed somebody at the time, and it was real admin kind of running around, but it was a great chance for me to get into a creative business and see what the different roles were and kind of find my way, really. And the design team were really great with me there. They gave me a couple of projects to have a go at and see if that was something that I could develop into. But it turned out it actually wasn't my thing. I was more about the ideas, but less about being able to do it technically. So I carried on in my admin role, was promoted to a personal assistant, realised I was kind of really good at the getting together and the organising side of things. I then volunteered for a couple of the company's events. So they were doing national events at this point, like car shows and bike shows and things like that. Really loved that. Ended up moving into that side of the business, and worked my way up to event manager in that team. And I was with them for 7 years, so I had a really great career from Future just out of that work experience placement. So again, take these opportunities. You just never know where they're going to lead you, and it exposes you to all sorts of different careers as well. I then moved on and worked for Wiltshire Council for a bit, so went to public sector. I wanted to do that from my events career perspective, to learn a bit more about the legislation side of things and licensing side of things, to expand my knowledge. But then did want to come back to the media world, and I came to develop the events team at Media Clash. And Media Clash, as I said, is traditionally a publishing business, so we publish magazines. You may have seen them around the city, Bath Life. We do the same in Bristol, Cardiff and Exeter. But we were developing these excellent business relationships through the magazine, and the events side of the business was quite small at that point, but there was a huge opportunity. So that has been a big part of my role at the company, developing its networking events, developing its business-to-business events, and now we've got really successful awards in all of the cities and really successful networking events. So I think with networking, it's something I've really only been exposed to it in the past 5 or so years through this role, and initially very much from an organising perspective rather than a participating perspective. So I've witnessed a lot of how people operate at these events and what they look for, and to be honest, you know, until even now, it kind of, walking into that room full of people is it makes my stomach turn, and I think, oh God, you know, who am I going to speak to? People are in their little groups and they're already chatting and everything. It can be so intimidating. So I just wanted to say, you know, I do have a few tips actually. I'm with the team here today, and we just had a little chat about it before, and I gathered a few ideas from everybody about how they feel and what some ideas would be. So just a reminder, you know, it is intimidating. People will be there chatting in their groups, but they are all there to do the same thing as you. They're there to network. They're there to talk. They love to meet new faces. You know, a lot of the time you'll go to networking events and there'll be quite a few similar faces because it's a lot of the same people all the time. So the more you go to, the more people you get to know, and that's a really nice position to be in as well. So you can always kind of start by seeking out somebody that you recognise and build up from there. They can introduce you to somebody maybe and go that way. As Vicky said, research in advance is great. If you can get a list of who's attending, stalk them on LinkedIn and try and find them when you get there. I think it's really good to kind of do a little bit of homework in advance, maybe prepare some questions that you'd like to ask everybody, prepare a little piece of you know, a little introduction about yourself, about what you want to say, and practice it, because it can make you a bit more confident then when you're speaking to people. Like Vicky said, you know, at these face-to-face networking events, it's not about having a hardcore business conversation. It's kind of like about keeping it light, and it's your initial kind of relationship building. So you can talk about personal stuff, humanize it, you know, like speak to them about obviously their job and what got them into that role. Or if you're not feeling that confident about talking about yourself and what you're doing, just keep on asking questions, you know, because people love to talk about themselves and their careers, and it's a great fact-finding mission for you, isn't it? So just have a little bank of questions that you'd like to ask. A good one that one of the team just said to me was about business cards, and I don't know what you guys will think. Maybe business cards are feeling a bit old school now, and like Vicky said, you know, LinkedIn is obviously a really big helper. But if you can ask for a business card, and if you have them, great, give them, but make sure you get there so you can be in control of the follow-up then. And also she said she actually made little notes on business cards as she took them away to say, oh, this person, we spoke about this, because sometimes you'll come away with a stack of cards and you can't remember who's who and what you discussed. So that was a good tip. And what else did we say? I think that was the main kind of topics really. Yeah, just be confident. Everybody's there to do the same thing. Keep it nice and short and sweet, like Vicky said. Keep it quite light, and yeah, don't forget your follow-ups, because that's lovely. If you can get those business cards or get those contact details on LinkedIn, contact them after, and yeah, use that as kind of a springboard for your relationships moving forward.
Great, lovely, thank you. Really helpful, yeah, really great, and so interesting, yeah, to hear about your journeys as well, along your career paths. Great, so over to Elliot. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, so a bit about my background, I started my career through the apprenticeship scheme, actually, way back 10 or so years ago, back when it was a digital marketing apprenticeship, and that was all very new. Apprenticeships sort of had this stigma attached to them. So that was, I jumped straight into agency life. That was with a digital marketing agency, and I was there for 2 years. When I jumped in, as some of the other panelists have said, quite early on, I was young, not really sure what path I wanted to take, but quickly fell in love with digital, and specifically the more technical and analytical sides. Soon after that, about 2 years after completing my apprenticeship, I came to Bath, joined an agency based here in Bath, who were one of the largest, PPC, so pay-per-click agencies based outside of London, with real focus then, laser focus on the aspects of digital that I really enjoyed, which were, paid search, paid social, industry that was, at the time clearly really booming and hitting its stride. There I worked, amongst some really slick people, a really talented team, got exposure to some great, fantastic clients, really, cut my teeth in that space for 5 years. And part of that process, I was working alongside a very close friend of mine from school, who is now my co-founder of my agency and business, Bind Media. Known each other a long time, and we soon after realized that this was something we could definitely be doing ourselves. We knew the industry very well. We had about a combined sort of 15 years experience at that point, and it was at that point that we set up Bind Media. So my journey leading me up until Bind Media was surprisingly focused on digital, considering I left my education really without the foggiest of what I was looking to pursue. I'm very fortunate and serendipitous that I kind of fell into it, to be honest with you. So we've been running Bind Media, as I said, for 3 years now. Over that time, we have grown to a team of 12. Lots of that growth has been actually since lockdown and the pandemic and COVID hit. We were very, very fortunate, I think, as I mentioned early on, due to the sort of sheer breadth of our client base, a real mix, which keeps things interesting, that we were pretty COVID-proof, really fortunate to be relatively COVID-proof. Of course, there were clients that were struggling and pausing activity, but equally there were clients that were thriving, with people shopping online increasingly, at home doing more gardening and all these things, where certain clients, were really thriving given everything that was going on. So super fortunate that we were able to grow and hire some team members through Creative Bath website as well. So we're proud Creative Bath sponsors. We use the job listings very regularly and the events, etc. So that's been a huge help to our business. So in terms of tips for networking, I think where to find and where to sort of look initially for events to attend, groups, those kind of things. Of course, Vicky has mentioned Creative Bath, great place to start. Certainly think local. What I've noticed, and certainly the way personally my business grew, a lot of the networking I had done has been digital, even pre-COVID. As a digital agency, many of our clients were digital first, quite international as well, so certainly had more of a focus personally on digital networking. Sites that are great to check for networking digitally, I'd say Meetup. Over COVID, whilst Meetup was traditionally more of a sort of a local groups, be it for sort of business or hobbies even, it's shifted through the pandemic as well, and sort of adapted to list lots of online events as well. So if the type of people that you're looking to connect with, or what you're looking to get out of networking is quite niche, then you don't have to be geographically restricted. You can get some initial experience on a web call like this, where that sort of confidence barrier might be a little bit lower versus in person. So definitely check that out. Check out Meetup, but it does have great local listings as well. There will be lots of events listed locally in Bristol and Bath also. Vicky mentioned LinkedIn, and we've talked about LinkedIn quite a bit with the other panelists as well, but definitely don't undervalue LinkedIn. Personally, when we're looking for graduates, because we're often hiring across the business, across many levels, we would go to LinkedIn and look for those people who've listed that they're recently graduated or that they're seeking opportunities, those kind of things. So as you're building these connections, as Vicky said, connecting with people and then opening up their networks on LinkedIn, because it really is a platform that's built on reciprocity, you're going to widen your reach then, and that's, you know, that's a great thing. So think of LinkedIn like your digital CV. You know, it's almost like a landing page of yourself. So any relevant experience, courses, extracurricular things, there's sections on there to list all of those kind of things on LinkedIn. The search function on LinkedIn is great as well, and we haven't mentioned that so far, so I wanted to bring it up. You can get really detailed on the kind of job titles of people that you want to engage with, and you know, their seniority, their roles within businesses, their industries. So again, if you really want to try and talk to very specific people, even the free version of LinkedIn, you don't have to pay for it, has some great search tools, and you know, you can ask these people, who do you think I should be talking to if I'm looking for X, Y, and Z? Or do you know of any great networking groups locally or indeed online that would help me achieve X, Y, and Z? So don't be afraid to be proactive on LinkedIn. You do need to try and cut through the noise. I think everyone on the panel would agree that LinkedIn is rife with kind of just blanket messages being pushed out. Automation on LinkedIn is a huge thing. So try and be quite quirky with your message and your approach, and cut through so you do get noticed and doesn't get lost in the sort of pool of messages. And that leads me on to, you know, be very specific when you're networking, be it digitally or in person. Be very specific and have a good understanding yourself of actually what it is you want to get out of networking personally. You know, as opposed to just outlining who you are and what you do, be very clear about what you're looking to achieve. And there's a fine line, as Vicky mentioned, between, you know, being friendly and not sort of going in all guns blazing to a new group, but it certainly helps everyone there if you're really clear of, you know, what you want to achieve, who you want to be perhaps introduced to. I think you can do that in a soft way as well that is still approachable. And then my final tip is sort of practice actually how to ask for that. You know, once you know what you want to achieve, in the same way as you might craft a sort of compelling LinkedIn message that cuts through the noise, practice, you know, your sort of elevator pitch, as they call it, you know, how you would pitch yourself, a bit of your background and what you're looking to get out of a networking event or experience. So Bind Media's business started through NatWest's Entrepreneur Accelerator scheme in Bristol, and one of the things we had to do there pretty consistently from day one was always be ready to pitch. So it set this slightly, in the early days, nervous, tense environment in the shared office, because people would walk up to you and just go, pitch. But, you know, after the first sort of couple of weeks, by the time you'd done that a few times, practiced it, you know, it would roll off the tongue and come very naturally. And it helps you, you know, go into and come out of those events with a really clear understanding of what you're looking to get the most out of them. Brilliant. So that's a wrap from me, Louisa.
Great. Thanks so much, Elliot. That's brilliant.
No problem.
Really, really useful, packed sort of notes, which hopefully everyone's writing down, but you can watch this session again, which is great. It'd be really interesting to know from the audience who has currently got a LinkedIn profile. If you can just pop that in the chat, that would be useful. And then to our final panelists, so really good to see you here, Paul. Very, very much welcome to you. And if you, over to you for an introduction and then your sort of top tips for networking. That'd be great. Oh, so you're muted at the moment. Hopefully we are going to be able to hear you.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent, brilliant. It's always the hardest thing being the last person, because all the good ideas have been talked about already. So I'm hoping that the things I cover up will be a little bit different. But I think everything that's been said previously, absolutely critical. I guess in terms of my own background, what I do now is totally unrelated to what I thought I was ever going to do. I was going to be a history teacher. That's why I went to university. And now I run a PR firm. I never did any teaching whatsoever. But I married a teacher, so, you know, there we are. But I left university before finishing university. I did 2 years after 3 years, and that was back in 1994. So if you do the maths, you'll figure out just how ancient I actually am. But I started my career selling advertising space for newspapers, because online publishing in those days did not exist. Everything was hard copy paper, I did that for a number of years, working for local and national newspapers. The idea was I was going to become a journalist. Once I decided I wasn't going to go into teaching, I thought, right, I'm going to be a journalist, because I didn't have a degree, so I couldn't go into teaching. I'll become a journalist. I can write, I can waffle. What else do you need? So I typically left my application for the journalism training school late, which meant I missed out on that year's intake. But that was being run by what is actually Europe's biggest owner of newspapers, is now called Mirror Group Newspapers, or Reach PLC, whatever it's called now. But they own things like the Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror, Sunday People. And I ended up becoming an ad manager for those 3 titles about 5 years later. I didn't get to go on the journalism training course because I started earning this thing called a bonus, which was really rather nice. And then I started getting promoted, and every time I got promoted, I got a pay rise. I was like, this is even nice. This is more money than being a journalist. I can come back to the journalism. It'll be fine. Let's just make the money, because I was skint and I needed the cash. But I was also enjoying it as well. But I did that for 11 years, and I got to the age of 32, 33, and I was like, that itch to become a journalist hadn't gone away, but I loved working in the media, because it's one of those industries that when you get into it, it gets under your skin, and it's very hard for it to ever disappear. So I had the bug for it, but I also had the bug to want to be a writer as well. But I needed to figure out what that job would look like in practice, and I decided, okay, PR, that's what I want to do, public relations. It combines my love of writing and the love of the media. But you can't make a transition from advertising sales straight into PR, because it's almost like the golden handcuffs, and no one would give me a chance to do it. They said, you're too old, or you've never written anything, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it for myself. So I did. So I did the postgrad in PR, and then set up as a freelance writer and freelance PR consultant, and did all right. I did it for 7 years. And then it got to January 2014, and I decided, well, let's transition this from being a lifestyle operation, basically a freelance career, into a business where you start hiring people, which is a really scary proposition. And I had no idea what managing people was going to be like. But you know, these are challenges that you have, and they're fun and exciting. So I did that. January 2014, we launched Clearly PR. We're now 7.5 years old. We're similar size to the guys over at Buying Media. We're just turned 13 people as of Monday this week, which is great. And that's someone who we hired via the Kickstart scheme, which was fantastic. And we've also got an intern who's been with us since February as well, from Bath University, in her 2nd year at the moment, doing media and communication. And I guess what I say with the clients that we work with now, we currently work with 20 clients across the UK, and we've got 3 who are operating in the United States as well. But a sizable number of those clients operate in the recruitment and human resources space. So that gives us first-hand information from employers directly as to the challenges and the things that they're looking for when they're hiring newly qualified or recently qualified graduates in their first or potentially their 2nd job as well, and also what they look for when they're hiring interns as well. So it gives us a wee bit of a sneak preview, and we've used those learnings and applied them for our own hiring requirements as well. I guess when it comes to tips, there are 3 things that I'll very quickly cover off, but a couple of things to bear in mind. First of all, not all jobs are advertised. It's estimated that around 70% of available jobs will never see the light of day. They're not on careers websites, job boards, any other portals, newspapers, magazines. They're what we call the hidden jobs market. And the challenge that you face is, how do you penetrate that hidden market? But actually, it's easier said than done. And I think the other key point to consider as well is networking is both online as well as offline nowadays. And I personally hate going to networking events, can't stand them. They send shivers down my spine. But online networking can get you in front of the right people at the right time a lot quicker as well. But there are definitely more opportunities to get on the radar of the employers that you really quite like the look of than there have ever been. So in keeping with the theme of this discussion, I canvassed the opinion of my network and went onto Twitter and LinkedIn yesterday and just asked the question, what networking tips would you share with current undergraduates and fresh graduates? And there were tons. I think altogether I got about 20 direct messages and comments coming back with various different ideas. They were all very different ideas as well, and they were all relevant. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I picked 3 that I think are pertinent, the things I've done myself, and they are things that some of the people that we've hired over the last 2 years in particular, the things that they did that got my attention and made me want to get in touch with them and say, I think you could be good for us. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a coffee. The first thing is socially network your way to a job. Everyone's already talked about social media in general. You're already part of a network, and that's your own social media channels. So utilize Twitter. You may not be a fan of it. Tough. Get on board with it, because that's where employers are hanging out. LinkedIn may bore you senseless, but that's where employers and hiring managers spend the majority of their time when they are recruiting and thinking about recruiting people. And they will start looking 6 or 8 months quite often before they even need that job to start, to find out where is the talent, who are the candidates that we can be looking for. So make sure you're hanging out where they're hanging out online and make yourself discoverable. Follow the companies that you quite like the look of, that you fancy working for, that you think they do great stuff. I would like to work with them because they're big in sustainability. They give a lot back to the community. They're a brilliant media organization, whatever. Follow them, but also follow the key people within the business as well. The managing director, the chief exec, they've got their own personal profiles on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you start liking and engaging with them, liking their content and engaging with them as well, then you're going to get on their radar. They're going to be like, who is this person? And you can capitalize on that even more if you start sharing content of your own. Maybe it's your own blogs. Maybe it's stuff that you liked in a newspaper or a magazine. So for example, we work in public relations. Well, our main publications that we look at are things like PR Week, The Drum. So start liking and sharing content from those sorts of publications, because what that does is that when one of these potential employers has a look at what else you're posting and sharing, they get an idea for what you're interested in, but you're also demonstrating that you've got your finger on the pulse of what is going on within that industry. Even if you've never worked in it before and you're still studying, it's demonstrating an active enthusiasm for the sector in which you want to be starting your career or continuing your career in. To finish off on the social media thing, just 2 things to remember. Always keep your profiles updated. And what I mean by that is post daily, even if it's just 1 post per day. Don't do it every week or sporadically every 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. That is a waste of time. You won't get anyone's attention doing that. But do it frequently, because whether we like it or not, business life is digital nowadays, and businesses will be operating in Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. Not many of you will be using Facebook, I'm sure, and Instagram in particular. The more comfortable you are with these medium on a day-to-day basis, the more effective you're likely to be and the more appealing you're likely to be as a candidate of choice for a potential employer. And the final thing on the social media side is never post any content you wouldn't want your mother to see. So be careful about what you post, because research has shown that 3/4 of hiring managers and employers check out a candidate's social media profiles when deciding whether to invite them for an interview or not. If they see something on there that is like, oh, your chances are gone. Doesn't matter how brilliant your CV is. We had an application come through just over a year ago. Somebody who had a first-class honours degree in media, and everything looked fantastic. Straight A levels, straight A's at A level, absolutely brilliant. Didn't touch up at all because there was stuff she was putting on social media, and it was like, oh God, okay. Because I know for a fact clients of ours check out our people and their social media profiles, and that can reflect on us as a business as well. So that's something to be mindful. Second tip, be direct. Competition for jobs has always been extremely high for graduates. There are more graduates than there are graduate jobs. We're in a very bizarre position at the moment whereby there is a huge amount of new jobs being created. In fact, it was reported today there are more jobs being created over the last 4 weeks than there have been for 7 years. So there's a great degree of optimism in the jobs market right now. The challenge is always going to be at the moment is demonstrating that you are worth a punt, that you are worth taking a gamble on, because the reality is you are unproven. What you're trying to sell is your potential to do a good job, and you can help yourself, but you've got to be more proactive and initiate the conversation with potential employers. So like others have said, get in touch with them, use the phone, send them an email, but don't do it to the info at whatever company name is. Find out who is responsible, who are the line managers, the hiring managers, the HR people, the managing directors. Find out who they are, get in touch with them. Have you got any internships coming up? Do you have any work experience placements coming up? Are you looking to recruit graduates in the next 3 to 5 months or whatever? If the answer is no, fine, you know it's no. You then need to figure out the next stage of your game plan. But going back to what I was saying, 70% of all jobs are never advertised, and there is a very good reason for that. It's largely because employers don't want to be inundated with hundreds of applications. So to give you a real life example from our own experience, in November last year, a second year student at Bath Spa got in touch and said, I'm doing media communication, do you do any internships? And it's like, no, we don't. We've never done one before. But it prompted the thought process of, well, why haven't we done one before? And what does it involve? So we got in touch with the university. We had to look to see what other companies do. And actually, it's one of the easiest things in the world to set up. So we thought, okay, do you want a job? So she came on as an intern at the beginning of February. She finishes at the end of August. But what she gets is 6-7 months worth of experience, doing just about 2 days a week of experience. But she's learning everything about what it's like to work in a PR and content creation agency. And that will be invaluable when she graduates and she starts looking for work, because she can say, I work for Clearly PR, they're the biggest PR firm in Bath, blah, 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 blah. Great, they can share, she can share experiences. So a lot of employees won't advertise it because they're scared of getting too many applications. It doesn't mean they haven't got the jobs. And it doesn't mean they haven't been having a conversation about what jobs they're going to be needing, because most employers are going to really start hiring activity in September and October, because they know the summer holidays are over. Summer holidays are over for students, but also for hiring managers who've got kids. So they're not going to be doing an awful lot. It's what we call the summer slowdown. So there won't be a lot of hiring activity in July and August, but September, October is when it goes boom. January and February, straight through the roof again. Lots of opportunities there. But don't wait for those time periods. Start engaging with these companies now before they start getting shed loads of applications coming from others. And my final one, I'll make this brief, is look for opportunities beyond the obvious. And what I mean by that is, going back to my previous point when I was saying, if the companies that you really like the look of don't have any opportunities coming up in the next few months, but don't let that determine your future. Don't allow that to be an excuse for not finding something. There are a plethora of charities and voluntary organisations in and around the Bath area, tons of them. I'm a trustee on one of them, Julian House. These charities are always looking for an extra pair of hands to help them out. But it's not about doing fundraising and doing collections. It could be in the marketing function, the HR function, the finance function, the business development function. It doesn't matter. A lot of these charities are organizations that are bigger than many corporate employers and employ an awful lot more people. So that creates an awful lot, a lot more opportunity for you to sort of get yourself in there as well. And again, it's about enhancing yourself as a potential candidate of choice for a potential employer. The more skills you can acquire, and the key things that you're invariably going to be looking for are teamwork, resilience, project management kind of stuff, time management, communication skills. These are all critical skills and are exactly what employers are looking for, but it's the biggest complaint that employers have when they see graduates coming through who don't have those skills. So even if you only get a week's worth of experience somewhere, you will start getting an insight into the skills that are important. And just that final point on that is, as a student, you have 8 weeks during the summer, probably as holidays. You have 2 or 3 weeks at Christmas and 2 or 3 weeks at Easter. When you add that up, that's about 3 months of time. Now you can sit around and just enjoy the time off, or catch up on studies, or get ahead of your studies. That's fine. But if there are internships which are operating for a week or 2 weeks, well, don't limit yourself to just one. Why don't you do 2 or 3 consecutively and build up your experience that way? Because the more you can get, the greater your chances are of being discovered by potential employers and being able to sell yourself as a really good employee to be taken on board. That's me done. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. What a fantastic, full advice. So thank you so much. That really, that really is giving so much to students and all of us, really. Really good points. I think key things that I picked up. Everyone check your social media, of course. It's a really good point. There's just so much in there. And yeah, although this session is about networking, it's a really good point, of course, taking any work experience that will help you move forward, and all of that is networking. So short internships, you're there, you're meeting people, so it's sort of active networking. We're running out of time, but I really do want us to do this a little just practice breakout rooms of networking. So I'm going to pop you all into a room with one of the presenters. There'll be 4 rooms, and that means there'll just be two people in each room, or 2 students in each room with a presenter. And it's just going to be 5 minutes now, because then I'll bring us all back together for the close. So it's a sort of speed networking, really. You're in there, you can put your camera on if you want to, and get into this as an opportunity. What would it be like to, what is it like? This is networking. It's a friendly, supportive space. You're just going to go in there, say who you are, have a chat, basically, no pressure. But it's just giving us all a little bit of a chance to test that out. So you will be invited into a room shortly. Let me just get this set up. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, we'll return to yeah.
Hi everyone. Sorry that pulls you out very quickly with no warning. I'm not quite sure how to give warning to breakout rooms in here. So apologies mid conversation. We've just got a couple of minutes left of the session. Hopefully that was useful. It was certainly speed networking, and hopefully that was useful for you though. Just have a quick chat with our presenters as well. Just having a quick look at the chat, the question asked earlier about LinkedIn profiles. That's been a theme for networking, and so most people said they do, and you know there's been some good tips of how to make the most of that and what you can do to improve yours, and some of you have said about it needs a bit of work. So lots of great advice, and thank you again to our 4 presenters so much for your time and your tips and your energy for this session. Sorry it's been so short. We could certainly carry on and get into more detail with all of this. So just the final couple of things to mention is for any graduating students that are in the room, we've got some freelance grants available. So I just need to keep that presentation shared. This, for anyone who's graduating, £250 available if you're embarking upon or continuing in a freelance career or a side hustle or something like that. So a really simple, short application process. And we really, encourage you to apply to that if you think that'd be useful to you. That's students from any course who are thinking of or already freelancing. The link to the form is there in the chat, and you can also find that via any of the careers newsletters. It's on our social channels too, or just get in touch with John or I about that. And then the next slide is just giving you an overview of the other sessions that are available through Workfest. So we're only on Wednesday, that's right, that's where we are. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Emerge, so that is also relevant for graduating students, particularly from creative courses. Hear about the studio residency Emerge, which is where I'm at now at Sign Hill, and then there's lots of other support. So there's interview support. And then next week, choosing a career, we've also got an extra session next week on Monday about social enterprise funding. So if you're interested in that, do get in touch and we'll give you the details. And then finally, there is a form, also a link in the chat to our feedback form. So we really appreciate it if you can just click on that link and fill that in. It will just take a couple of minutes, but it's really useful for us, feedback for these sessions. And then a final tip there from Vicky in the chat, connect people with other people for the greater good. What goes around comes around. So that's a really good final advice as well. Thank you, Vicky. And yeah, thank you again to our panelists and to all the students that have attended the session, and all the very best. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you very much. Have a good one. Take care.
Panel people for coming on. Appreciate it.